Good morning there, hardcore Jesus freaks here at Big House. Hopefully everybody is doing awesome. It's a beautiful, nice, warm Sunday morning. And you're here worshiping God and just encouraging each other in the Lord. Jeremy is bringing you the next in our series of You Are, I Am. And he's been got a little play of words on it because, because God is, we can say to God, you are, so I am. And God will say to you as well, you are because I am. And God is our God. Now, we're never going to be God, but God did make us in His image. And today, as Jeremy talks about the fact that God is our God, it gives us some definite confidence in who we are because He is our God. I want you to give a great big welcome to Jeremy Renken.
Okay. Thank you, guys. We're going to reverse this, okay? Now, today is my opportunity, I think, more than anything, to cheer you guys. Is that cool? You guys ready? So you guys have cheered me, and I've been grateful for it. But I was watching that video this morning of all the things that Big House does. And all the different people who've served and who have touched and who have been a part of helping do something unbelievable. I don't know about you, but when people do things for God and people's lives are impacted, that is a cool thing to me. That's a really cool thing. And so I applaud you guys this morning, Big House Inc., for making a difference in people's lives. A week ago, I told you about my uncle. Remember who bribed me? My uncle's sitting right back over there. Give him a wave, Ed. Now, there's a reason. I'm telling that story not because of calling him out or trying to embarrass him, but I don't know if you've realized this or not, but there's a progression. There's a progression in life for all of us, okay? Somebody comes to know God, and they get it. Like the last song we heard. Amazing Grace, right? I don't know if you know the story of that song or not, but that guy, the guy who wrote that song had been to hell and back, let me just tell you. And God got a hold of his life. And he's been touching people ever since as that song gets sung. God got a hold of my uncle's life. And he realized that there was a young man who was in need of God to do something in his life. And he went to extreme costs. He got money out. Now this is where it gets to be real. Like he got the pocketbook out, right? And he put some money into play, all to get me down to a concert so I could hear the good news of Jesus Christ. And it impacted me. And now today I stand right here and now I'm speaking to you, right? Amen. And you're hearing the word. And this is where it gets fun because all of a sudden you get to get involved. Now one of the things we know believe, belong, become is that you guys, and I know PJ, which he's doing good, he wants you guys to be what? Giant killers, right? He wants you to be giant killers. Now guess what? Today we're talking about God. We've been in a series of Psalms 18, 1-3, and we're talking about God. And I'm going to give you the secret. I don't know this is a secret, so you can't go telling anybody, okay? I'm going to give you the secret to being a giant killer. Now, I've seen some stuff. We're going to give this shirt away. This is a gift from Big House to one of you. And I decided I'm not going to give it out. I'm going to let my brother right here pass it out. But he's going to give it to somebody. Because we want, in this house, we want a group of people who would stand up when everybody else is running. Right? That's the kind of people I want to be surrounded with. That's why I feel like I'm at home when I'm in Big House, because I realize that there's some people with that kind of heart who are sitting in these chairs that say, I'm going to stand up when everybody else is running. Now, we're talking about something big today. And I wrestled, I'll be honest with you. I've been busy, I've been traveling, I work. I don't know if you realize this or not, but I got a full-time job. I'm doing this, and I was out of town. I was in Montgomery, Alabama, deep south, man, for most of the week. I'm going to be out again next week, and so I'm kind of running around doing my thing, trying to keep everything together, okay? And the moment, and this is an insight about my life, okay? The moment I finish today, I'm going to sit in my car right out here, and I'm going to get in there, and my mind will already shift to next Saturday. Because we'll be through this week, and I'm on to the next thing, because I need to beg God. And this is how it works, I'll be honest with you. It starts like this. This is my prayer in the car. You guys are getting insight in my life. God, help me. Help me. Help me. And it usually gets a little more impassioned as I get closer to my house. Lord, help me. I don't know what to say next week. Help me. Help me, help me. So I started last week. We finished last week, right? Talked about deliverer and savior. I started last week with this because there's a lot of different angles when the concept of God comes up, right? A lot of different angles that we could go, a lot of different directions. And my first thought is I'm going to get up there and I'm going to tell you, because I've done a lot of studies. One of my personal passions in life is studying a concept of apologetics. And what that is basically being able to communicate or defend the faith. Because there's all these different people who have different opinions. And so my mind immediately jumps to, I'm going to give you guys all sorts of crazy cool things as to why God is real and why the Bible is real. And then he did something. That was my thought probably Sunday, Monday. Tuesday, I'm at a conference and I'm doing business and all this other stuff. And I realized, you know what? In the end of it all, that's not my responsibility to twist you or to get you to come up with the words to get you into believe in what's true or not. That's not my responsibility. My responsibility, and this is why I feel that way. If I can convince you into believing God, somebody's going to be a better talker, they're going to be a little bit slicker, they're going to be a little bit faster, and you're going to shift down the way. My responsibility is to give you who he is, and then it's on you. And you got to make a decision and say yay or nay. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Right? So let me read this to you guys. We're going to start it out. Hopefully by the end of these 8 weeks, you guys will have it memorized, and it'll be good, right? I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I'm saved from my enemies. Amen. Amen. This week we're talking about God. And I'm just going to be flat honest with you, I've seen some ugly things done in the name of God. When I grew up, my most comfortable spot speaking is right down here, not up here. And there's a reason for that. I grew up in what's called high church. It's very formal, very proper. The pastor's back, like way back, and up higher than this, like up high. Like it's formal church. It's all about God is up there, out there, way away from you. And because of that, I like to be right down in, because I feel like he's personal and he's involved with us, and he wants to move in our hearts and our lives in an amazing way. And that's where I feel most comfortable. Even standing right here, I don't like it, because I want to be down and mixed. I'd rather be walking around in the middle of all of this, and that would make me more comfortable. But in that setting, I saw some ugly. I would say I was what I would consider a Christmas and Easter. Like, we went on church, and this is the reason why. I got up, we'd get up to church, and they would be like this over here, and we'd come through the door, and there'd be people standing in suit and tie. They'd be done up nice, man, I'm telling you, nice clothes, dresses, suits, the whole thing. They'd be decked to the nines, and I get it. I understand there's nothing wrong with looking good for God. I'm not here to debate whether you should come in jeans and a t-shirt, which I feel more comfortable in, or you should dress up. That isn't my point. But we would come through that line, and the people's hands that I'd be shaking with, I'd just been partying with the night before down at the local bar. And they've been doing the things that you wouldn't think they should be doing. So when I grew up, My mindset about God was not one that was accurate, because in my mind, the way it worked is you went out and did what you wanted, and you came and you dressed up and you put on a good show, and you got into church, and that's the way it was. The pastor there, my mom worked as a receptionist, a secretary at that church. The pastor there got sick. So as a church, what do you do when your pastor's sick? You rally around him, right? We gave money. We were young. I mean, as a kid, we just did trips. We raised money. We'd rake yards. And I mean, I lived where it's snow, so trees, we got trees, not Arizona stuff, but leaves come down. You rake all that stuff. You shovel. We did all that stuff to raise money so we could do trips and go to conferences and stuff. It was just, for us, it was just a big joke. I mean, we wanted to get away with the girls and have a little trip. I mean, that's just the way it was growing up. Pastor gets sick, so we gave him all of our money as a youth group. The church rallied around him. One day I'm at church and he's coming down. There was a choir loft kind of up behind where, like, it'd be behind you guys. And he was coming down to come up and speak, and he fell down the stairs. The ambulance shows up. Everybody's concerned. Well, in the end, the whole thing was just a big old lie. The guy was stockpiling that cash and taking it. That's the kind of thing I grew up with. And my mindset of who God was got blurred. I was down in Mexico one time on a trip. It was a missions trip. We were doing stuff down there. And we sat with a group of pastors who were asking, how do you handle, because we have one pastor who's doing stuff to young girls that he shouldn't be doing. You read in the news about the priests and the different things. And your mind gets blurred about who he is. All because of people, right? Now, I'm a sucker for a good cop movie or a cop show. I'll just be honest. I like that kind of stuff. And what do they do in any kind of show like that? They hook you, right? Especially if they want to have a second episode. Right? If you're watching a weekly thing, every week the hook gets thrown out there. It's like I'm like, ooh, that's pretty. I know I shouldn't bite that hook, but I'll be back next week, right? This is that week for us. This week is the crux of this whole thing, man. It's the hook. We're going to talk about some cool concepts in the weeks to come, but this is it. We're talking about giant killers and being a giant killer. Well, it starts with getting who God is right first. That's where it starts. So let's look at who he is. Does that sound good? That sounds good to me. Okay, I'm glad you're with me and not sleeping out there. If you got your Bibles, we're going to John chapter 4. John chapter 4. And you're going to say some of these are no-brainers, but you're going to understand why it's important in a little bit. It's all going to come together, okay? But it starts with this. God is spirit. He's spirit. He's bigger. When you read this book, it talks about his mighty right hand and all those different things. But what those are illustrations to who he is, because we can't comprehend him. John 4 says this in verse 23. It says, "But the hour is coming, and now is here, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him, because God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." Now here's a good little context thing for you guys, because I like throwing in little things that help you along the way, because I'm not going to be with you forever. I'm here for a limited time. This is a limited time offer right here. When somebody preaches to you, and they ask you to open up the Bible, and we don't have them up today, but they put the scriptures up on the screen and you're reading. And this is a good reason why you should bring a Bible or pull out your smartphone. Read what's happening in context. And what I mean by that is start a little bit before. They may say, hey, go to John chapter 4, verse 23. Well, a smart person who's sitting in those chairs are going to open it up and say, I'm going to jump back to 16 or 15, and I'm going to read through. Like, I'll read with what is going on, but I'm going to read through, because the number one error in communicating the truth is taking something out of context. And if you go back and you read before and you come back and you read a little bit after and what they're saying doesn't fit, it doesn't mean that the point is completely wrong, because I've heard sometimes that people have communicated still true to gospel points, but obviously there's a reason. It's out of context. It needs to fit with what's going on. So where are we in John chapter 4? Jesus finds himself in Samaria. Now, I don't know if you realize this or not, but the Israelites and the Samaritans were like arch rivals. I mean, as arch as it gets. They're opposite ends of the spectrum, okay? And Jesus was just in Jerusalem, and he realizes he needs to get out because the religious people of the day were coming for him. So he takes his homies, the disciples, and they go on a little journey. Now I imagine the journey like this, and maybe my mind is a little bit bizarre, but I imagine Jesus walking and he's got all the disciples kind of around him, right? And they're listening because they're on this journey, kind of checking everything out, and they're talking about life. And I wish that I could have been a part of some of those conversations, because I have a feeling some really cool things were talked about in those times. Questions and answers, things that I would love to know the answer to kind of happen. You know, it's kind of like being on a road trip with some buddies. You get into the most interesting conversations when you're out kind of in the middle and there's nothing else to do and people start opening up. I imagine that. Jesus is walking, he crosses the line into Samaria, and I would imagine this is the disciples. So here's Jesus, he kind of travels across, right? This is how I imagine the disciples to be. And I would bet it's pretty accurate to this. They're coming across, hey, Jesus, that's Samaria. We don't go over there. And he says, come on, guys. Come on. And they find themselves in the place they shouldn't be. I was telling the group last night, the way I imagine it is this. I was in New York a few weeks back for a work trip. And I'd never been to New York, so my partner and I, we got in a little bit early, and so there was two things I wanted to see in New York. I wanted to see Ground Zero, and I wanted to see kind of Times Square, because it just, I mean, if I could sum up New York, that's, you know, there's plenty of other great things I'm sure to see, but I wanted to see those two things while I was there. And when we got done with the night, we got on a train, and we caught the last one out, and we got dropped out. And when I walked down the stairs, I was imagining one of those old cop, you know, I told you I like cop movies. You know how the suckers always end up out kind of in the middle of nowhere where they're not supposed to be? That's how it was. Like, I came down the stairs off the train, and I was looking around thinking, I can hold my own, but this is not where I want to be hanging out. We saw some guys ride by on bikes, which I kind of laughed at, which might have been the wrong move. But they're kind of pedaling by on bicycles, and they went by and they went up the street and they looped around and came back on the other side. I was chuckling because they were on bicycles, but like, I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, this is probably not. Okay, I had to wait 7 minutes for the bus to get there, okay? For 7 minutes, I'm sitting there thinking, this is my mind is running, what is my escape scenario right here? All I've got to do is be faster than you, partner. Right? Yeah. We got on the bus driver goes, you guys were not a very good area. I'm like, oh, really? Imagine that. That's how these guys found themselves. They found themselves not in an area where they felt threatened, but these were clashing clans, so to speak. They didn't want to be there. And Jesus one-ups them. He says, okay, guys, I'm going to sit here by this well. Why don't you go on into town? Jesus, what are you doing? Go on in and get some food. So they go. And a lady comes out, right? You remember the story? She comes out to draw water. She's not doing it in the morning or the evening when everybody else is doing it because she doesn't feel like she fits in with the rest of them, but she comes out at lunchtime and she finds Jesus sitting there. Now this is where it gets interesting to me because Jesus says what I just read to you about there is going to be a time coming when true worshipers, he ends up in this conversation, he tells this young lady, when true worshipers will worship in spirit and in truth because God is spirit. He gives her a little picture of who he is and what happens. She goes back into the town and she starts talking about Jesus, and the town comes to know him all because she gave him a little glimpse. He gave her a little glimpse of who he is. Now, I started this thing with that shirt about giant killers, and I'm going to keep it as the hook the whole way through because that's what I want to be. I told you guys the last few weeks, if I could have my name in any chapter or book of the Bible, it would be Hebrews chapter 11 because it's a faith chapter. It's a chapter of people who did unbelievable things for God. And here's the first glimpse of that, of how to become a giant killer. Is to start to understand who God is and let him begin to use you to go out and do unbelievable things. So God is spirit, but he's more than that. I don't know if you realize that, but he's more than that. We're going to go back to Exodus chapter 3 because not only is he spirit, but he's also personal. Exodus chapter 3 says this, and this might sound a little bit strange to you, but give me a second because it's going to make sense. It says this, then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers who has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Now, okay, that's not the question I would have been asking, okay? Moses is obviously a lot smarter than I am. That's not the question I would have asked in that scenario. He finds himself, remember the story? The Pharaoh of Egypt decrees that all children 2 and under will be put to death. And they go around. And there's one mother who says, I don't want my son to die, so she puts him in a basket and sends him down the river. Pharaoh's daughter finds him. She takes him in as her own and raises him. Now, Moses isn't just some chump, man. This guy was raised with every benefit of everything. Like, he got everything that was afforded to him, from education to training to all this stuff. He was given all of that. And then God speaks to him, and what does he do? He tries to take it in his own hands, right? And he kills a guy, an Egyptian guy. He could have got out of that, let me just tell you. He wouldn't have gotten in trouble. But he runs, and he finds himself in the desert for 40 years. Now, the Bible doesn't say one way or not, but I believe this to be true and consistent with what's going on. I don't think Moses heard from God for those 40 years. I think he was just out there hanging out doing his thing. And in the middle of it, he's out in the desert, right? All of a sudden, he finds himself in front of a burning bush. A burning bush. Probably something, the guy's in the desert. There's probably something he sees from time to time out there, a lightning strike or something. But for whatever reason, this burning bush captures his attention, and he finds himself standing there, and he's in this conversation with God. And God says, I want you to go back to my people. And he says, whoa, 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 whoa. Who should I, if they ask me who sent me, what name should I give them? What name should I give them? I'd be asking, if that was me, I'd be saying, Lord, what kind of miracle are you going to do for me? How are you going to show that I'm the guy, not what your name is? And this is what God says. I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. I am has sent me to you. You see, the God that I serve is so much different than all the other ones out there. Because every other God, every other religion, again, I've studied apologetics and I've studied other religions and I've looked at all that stuff. I've spent a long time doing all that stuff. But every other religion, and I'm going to give you a point right here that you need to listen because this is important. Every other religion only needs one name to describe their God. One name. In this situation, God comes down and he says, I am. I'm all of it. I cover the spectrum. And that's why in the Old Testament you read passage after passage of names because they didn't know, he was so big they didn't know how to describe him. So they get into a situation and they find themselves saying, man, what in the world just happened? Something crazy did. How do we describe this? I don't know. Let's give God another name of glory because he continues to amaze us. So here's some of his names. Yahweh. I said it last week. It was so sacred that the people of Israel wouldn't even speak it. They wouldn't even write it. It was so sacred. Elohim. El Shaddai, Adonai, the Ancient of Days, the beginning and the end, Abba, Father. And the list goes on and on and on because he's personal. He cares about what's going on in your situation. Right now, where you sit, in the middle of life, all the craziness is going around, whether it's good or bad or anywhere in between. He knows it, and he cares because he's personal. From there, it goes on. Not only is he personal, but he's also life itself. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God. He knew he didn't even have to go back and give all an explanation. Now here's where it gets interesting to me, and we've got some nails, and if you're a visitor you get these, and I'm not going to use all of these, but he's life itself. I've got I got 6 nails in my hand right here, okay? Now if I was to take these 6 nails, right, and stand behind here, I'll move my Bible a little bit, and I was to cast those 6 nails on that podium right there, the odds of how they landed, if you were just to walk in and walk up here and look at that, they just landed scattered. It'd be pretty good chance that somehow randomly that could come, right? That could happen. Now if I was to take those 6 nails, and they got the head and they go down to the point, and I was to take the head and put that on the inside, and I was to form with these 6 nails a perfect circle. And I was to take those nails and put them on your driveway at home, right? Or out in front of your door. The chances of those 6 nails not only landing in front of your door, but landing in that perfect circle are pretty slim, right? Now if I'm betting, and I'm not a lottery man, but if I'm a betting man, I'd take the chances of the scattered randomness, right? Not the perfect circle with all the heads of the nails on the inside all pointing to the outside. The chances of that are a lot less, wouldn't you say? Now think about this. My body is made up of over 600 miles of blood vessels. 600 miles. My nervous system, my brain, and every system of my body works perfectly in sync, so that everything flows exactly the way that it is, and you see me standing right here. When I say God is life, God is the author of life. He is the one in chapter 3 who made Adam out of dust and breathed life into him. I didn't come from no sloppy goo somewhere 200 million billion years ago. Just to get me, the statistical chances are so astronomical. I mean, it is ridiculous. But now think about it. Not only did it have to be so random, if you believe in something like evolution, not only did it have to be so random that we needed a guy and a girl to randomly, separately develop at the same time so that they could get together and have kids. Come on now. He is spirit. He is personal. And He is life itself. From there we go to Acts chapter 17. Because not only is He all the things that we just talked about, He's also infinite. He's outside of time and space as we understand it. Paul says this, and he's talking to some guys who are pretty smart. He says, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious." He's giving him a compliment. He's sugaring them because he's going to come in with the right hook, right? "For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with the inscription, 'To the unknown God.' What therefore you worship as unknown, this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is He served by human hands, as though He needed anything, since He Himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And He made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and boundaries of their dwelling place, that they should seek God in the hope that they might feel their way towards Him and find Him. Yet He is actually not far from each one of us. For in Him we live and move and have our being." He's calling you. He's saying straighten out your theology about who He is so that He can be who He needs to be in your life. James 1:16, if you keep flipping back. So not only is He all that, He's infinite and He's personal, but in James, and it's a little bit past Timothy and Titus and Hebrews, and you hit James. James 1:16 is He's constant. He's constant. It says this, "Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers, for every good and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change." There's no variation. There's no shadow. His yes is yes, and His no is no. And of His own will He brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of His creatures. Now, my wife's grandfather was a doctor. And this constant thing is an interesting thing, because when I'm talking to people, one of the first things that anybody who doesn't believe in God says is, "I don't believe in Him." And most of the time when I find myself talking to somebody who says that, "Well, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in who God is," it comes across almost angry. I don't know if you've been in those I don't believe in God. I'm like, whoa. If you don't believe in Him, why are you so angry at Him? Because usually the issue that we face and struggle is the issue of things not going the way we want or thought they should go, and so we get angry at God. And out of that anger, the only retreat that we have is to say that we don't believe in Him. Because there's nowhere to go when you're angry with God other than backing up and saying, I am not going to believe in you. The same is true when we're dabbling in things we shouldn't dabble in. We get into some things that we know we shouldn't be doing. The Bible uses the word sin. And we know we shouldn't be dabbling in those things, but we do anyway. So we retreat back to a position of Him not being real. The reality is when you face somebody who's in the middle of being angry about that, the question you need to ask them, or you need to ask yourself, because you may be sitting there right now saying, well, I'm pretty angry too. The question you need to ask yourself is, what happened that you got so angry in the first place? That's what I had to ask Jamie's grandfather. What was it? And it was a tragic story. He was a doctor. He saw a young kid get in a car accident, and he spent all night with him in the hospital. All night with him in the hospital, trying to save him, doing everything that he could to save that little kid. And he wasn't able to save him, so he got angry because he couldn't wrap his mind around it. It wasn't big enough to capture it all. And so he retreated to a position of being angry at God and spent the rest of his life saying that he was an atheist, when really the whole issue was just the fact that he was mad about something, that he didn't like how it came out. Now, I don't know about you, but there are things that happen in this life that really don't make any sense to me. Like, why can I pray for one person and they get healed and touched of God and things change, and I pray for the next person in the exact same way with the exact same person as who I am, there's same faith, same everything, you pray for them and that person doesn't get healed? Why does it happen? Why does one person have this happen and the other person have this happen? Now, I don't get that stuff. I don't get it. I don't have the answers, nor am I going to claim to have the answers, but in the end, He is constant. It doesn't mean that He's not worthy of serving. It just means you're not there and you don't have the mindset to understand. I don't get it. Like, I don't get how God can be spirit. I'm right here. I'm right now. I see you guys outside of this. I don't get it. But He's spirit in such a way that He not only knows right where you guys are at, but every other of the 8 billion people out there, He gets all of them too. He's not confined by the limitations that we're confined by. Beyond being constant, God is also moral. A couple verses prior to that, in verse 13, chapter 1 of James, it says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and He Himself tempts no one." He is moral, friends. He knows the difference between right and wrong, and He doesn't change. He doesn't shift with the changing. Now, I'm not out here to judge. I'm not the judge of anybody. But I'm just going to tell you, I went to Hawaii, and it was a good time with my wife. We went to Hawaii on our honeymoon. I'm full supporter of honeymoons, okay? Full supporter. Wedding my wife can have, I'll take the honeymoon. And while we were out there, one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to stop in Oahu on the way home because I wanted to go to Pearl Harbor. That's something I wanted to see. And my wife wanted to go to Polynesian Cultural Center. So I felt like that's a 50-50 split, right? I get one thing, she gets something. That seems fair, right? So we went to Pearl Harbor, and it was everything. I mean, If you served in the military, my hat's off to you. I would have served in the military, but they wanted to put me in a submarine. And I could not imagine being in a submarine for all my days. My hat's off to you. But when we went to the Polynesian Cultural Center, and it's just this place where they look at all the different people of the South Pacific, which is not a place, if I could retire, I'd retire the South Pacific. It's all right. It's all right down there. So we went around and we did all these things. Well, we got to dinner and they're going to have a luau. You know, those are big things in Hawaii. And I hadn't been really a part of a luau, but basically is some guys that are a lot hulkier than me, wearing loincloths basically, looking buff and masculine, spinning fire, not only torches, but they're spinning fire torches. Okay? So I'm thinking, what am I doing? I'm on my honeymoon, and my wife doesn't need to be looking at these guys dancing around doing this stuff. That's another story. I'll finish that one another day, okay? But we went up to get some soda, and while I was there, I realized that the Mormons owned the Polynesian Cultural Center. Now again, I'm not a judge between right and wrong. I'm not here to argue with people about that. But an interesting thing, when I was there, I got up to the soda machine, and the only soda that was there that was available was caffeine-free diet soda in every one. Caffeine-free diet Pepsi, caffeine-free diet this. And I'm just like, ugh. If I drink, this is the way it works for me. I ain't drinking diet. If I'm going to drink it, I'm going to drink it, okay? That's just the way it is. I'm not drinking diet soda. I never liked the taste of it. Just the way it is. Well, a couple years later, the Mormons bought Pepsi-Cola. And there's now Pepsi in that fountain, let me just tell you. I start struggling with things in religion. And it isn't about serving Pepsi or Diet Pepsi or anything like that. But I struggle with things when things start changing. Because the God I serve is constant and He is moral. And He doesn't shift around because of buying Pepsi-Cola or not buying Pepsi-Cola. Not only is He moral, but He also walks in integrity. 1 John 5:18 says this. We know that everyone who has been born of God does not keep on sinning. But he who was born of God protects him, and the evil one does not touch him. We know that we are from God, and the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. And we know that the Son of God has come and has given us understanding so that we may know Him who is true. And we are in Him who is true, in His Son Jesus Christ. He is the true God and eternal life. Little children, keep yourself from idols. He's moral and He's integritous. And the last one, because I could keep going. There are so many things about God, but the last one is this, is God is love. He's love. John 15:12 says this. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that someone laid down his life for his friends. And you, this is Jesus talking to His disciples, you are my friends. If you do what I command you. No longer do I call you servants, for a servant doesn't know what his master is doing, but I have called you friends. For all that I have heard from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you, that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, He may give it to you. These things I command you, so that you will what? love one another. He's love. He made an ultimate sacrifice for you and for me. Now, this is where it gets just really fun for me. Because every one of those things He is. But let me read you this verse and help you understand why this is an important one for you and for me. I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock, in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. When you read in the Bible, Lord, and it has a capital L and then a little bit smaller, but they're still capital letters, O-R-D. What you're looking at is the word Yahweh being used. The most sacred of names for God. So he starts, my Lord, I love you, my strength. The Lord is my rock. He's declaring that Yahweh is all of these things. And we're going to talk about a few more of the next coming weeks. But He's all of these things. And then in the middle of verse 2, he gets to what? My God. My God, my rock. What David is doing right there is he is doing this, friends. He's saying, Yahweh, you are everything. You are everything. And when he gets to verse 2, he does this. He says, my God. My God, I bow my knee to you because I realize that you are all of that. You are all of that and some. I bow to you. You are my God. Now we started, and I don't have that shirt anymore because we gave it away, but we started and I said I was going to give you the key, right? The key to being a giant killer. Key to being a giant killer. The key to being a giant killer all starts with your understanding of who God is. If you understand and you capture in your heart and your mind who He is, you will just be like that little boy that marched out onto a battlefield and said, who's going to defy the God that I serve? I don't care if you're 10 foot tall. But it started for David in his understanding of who God is. You'd be just like three guys. When the king of the nation builds this 50-foot gold statue, and they say, everybody's going to come together and we're going to bow down and worship at this idol. And they say, you know what, I don't care about that. I know the God that I serve, and it ain't that gold statue over there. The God that I serve can save me even from your fiery furnace, but even if He doesn't, now this is where it gets bold, even if He doesn't, I'm still going to serve Him. Amen. But it all starts with your understanding of who God is. Now, if you're like me, and you want to be somebody who ends up one day with their name written in Hebrews chapter 11, as a person who stood up and helped people during that journey believe, belong, and become, they helped them, helped people down that path. I applauded you guys because I saw slide after slide at the start of this service of people doing exactly what matters to God. Helping other people, loving them, giving them a hug, giving them a bag of food, giving them clothing when they need it, bringing them in as a brother or sister and saying, you know what, I don't care what you look like, I don't care how you smell, it doesn't matter what kind of bike you park on the back side of our building, it doesn't matter if you walked or rode a bicycle here, I'm still going to love you, and I'm still going to do what? Point you to the God that I serve. Amen. That, my friends, is where it begins. But the reality is that there are a lot of us sitting here today that need to shuffle some of our thinking about who He is. And it could be because you got hurt along the way. Now, I have 2 boys, and in our house, things get destroyed. It's a pretty regular thing that I'm throwing things in the waste bin, all right? Because something got thrown against the wall. I've been lucky we haven't broken any windows yet, or any bones. I'm waiting for both of those days to come, but it gets a little bit rowdy, to say the least. My 3-year-old is a pretty decent talker, but most of the time when he's asking for some toy that he has, because we have like these little bins that I'm just like, I'm throwing them all in there because I don't know what else to do with this stuff. And so he comes to me, Daddy, help me find this. And I'm like, I have no idea what we're looking for, but I'll dig through toys with you, whatever. And so I drag him over to the bin with me, and we start digging. I make him stand right by me because I don't know what I'm looking for most of the time. I'm just pulling things out, and I'm just like, well, tell me when you see it. We'll be good, right? Well, the other day we got to the bottom, and I found this. I didn't know it got broken. I'd gotten him a magnifying glass, you know. I grew up frying ants or any other bug that I could find. So I thought it'd be fun, you know. You buy your kid a magnifying glass to take care of him, right? But this was laying down in the bottom of one of those bins, and I just thought, I probably shouldn't let this nice sharp piece of glass be laying down in the bottom of a bin, because usually what would happen is it becomes a frisbee or a disc, or the next thing I know I got something stuck in one of their necks or something, you know. That's just how it works. When you got 2 boys, I was one of 2 boys, and I know how it was. Like, we were rowdy. So I grabbed this out of there, and I was, I spent the week while I was here. I didn't bring it with me, but while I was here and I was preparing this, I had this sitting on my desk. I wasn't sure if I wanted to throw it away or if I wanted to still use it as a torture device for ants. I wasn't sure. I was still weighing in on that one. But I was sitting on my desk, and I got looking, started looking at my fingerprint. In the palm of my hand, I was looking at the creases and stuff. And I realized a lot of us, while I was looking through this thing at my hand, I realized that a lot of us have lost sight of who He is. We've pictured God as this policeman, kind of waiting to bust us when we break the rules. Or maybe we've gone from the policeman stage to, well, He's kind of like a wise old grandfather. You know, He's there to give us some advice along the way, kind of steer us in the right direction. Or maybe He's a gift giver, right? When I need Him, oh, Lord, help me. I've spent all my money on stuff I shouldn't have bought, and now I'm desperate for rent. Help me, Lord. Help me. Maybe He's a gift giver. And all the while, our view of who He is has gotten skewed. It's gotten skewed. Today is about refocusing that view on who He is, so that you can be the kind of person who stands on the battlefield and says, my God, my God, my God is the one. He is the one. And I serve him not out of obedience, but because he is worthy. He is worthy to be served. When you get to that point and you settle it and all your views on who he is are right, we will have a Big House Inc., a church full of giant killers. Amen.